One of the most significant problem is housing. And in our community, most of our buildings are very old, and they have all been paid up 100 years ago. And the landlords take in the rental and basically put very little back in terms of investment. They've been able to get away with it on the commercial side because the small business people then, you buy a business, so you need to invest in it. So they would do the superficial investment, unless you got a building and built a restaurant, a brand new restaurant, for example. So then, you changed all the pipes, in your area. But for the living quarters, the landlords try to say is rent control, for example, and I don't buy that, because before rent control came into the city 20 some odd years ago, we had no rent control, but those buildings were not fixed up properly either, and they already been paid off. So, and there was no rent control. So people just take the money and don't invest back in the building. And we've been trying to teach people the significance of historical buildings, old buildings. You go to Europe, you don't go to look at new buildings. You go to look at historical buildings 400 or 500 years old. Why we look at them? Because they have maintenance. They have, kept up the building. We're trying to educate people the same way. Another major problem is that our community culturally for hundreds of years have always taken care of its own problem. That's why we have so many organizations in Chinatown itself. We felt that it is a very shameful thing to ask the government for a handout or ask government for help. That permeates through all of the immigrants' mentality until 30, 40 years ago. As I said, the third group, the activists, start saying, no, we pay taxes. Therefore, the government have certain responsibility to fix up your street, to demand this be done, better lighting, better sewage treatment, better water, better this and that. And unfortunately, not very many public elected officials would spend the time to understand and study the community. I have high hopes and expectation from our district supervisor, for example, and I have never been a fan of district supervisorial races, district supervisors, and of our current representative, because he's more responsible. So therefore, I'm more hopeful, because you need to spend the time to understand a community. Some politicians, by and large, do not understand. They want conformity. They want the community united with one voice. And I said, the hell with you. Why should we conform? We have landlords, we have tenants, we have Republicans, and we have reactionary Republicans too, as well as Democrats. We have fat people and skinny people. Why should we conform to one voice? We don't expect that from the Italian community, Irish community, or whatever. Why do we need to have one voice? That's bullshit, you know? And so then you look at the other side. Okay, finally, I think I didn't support Aaron Peskin the first time. So, but the second time, I did because I think he earned it. And so, but then now you're looking at second term. 3 years, he'll be gone. Then it starts all over again with another one. And you feel a little bit frustrated because then you get one and then the person does not want to spend the time to understand. The community is not that complicated. If you look at the issues, you know, you look at the overall things, we're no different than any other community. We have people advocating tear down all the whole Chinatown and replace them with high-rises like Hong Kong. We have leaders actually saying that. Then you have others, myself included, that say, wait a minute, you know, you can't do that. You know, I don't want 20 years from now, you have Chinese American kids going around, travel up and down California, studying their roots and where their forefathers settled. And then they come to Chinatown and find a phony gateway that depicted once was a thriving, living, breathing community. In LA, Chinatown, they have a phony facade. The original Chinatown is no longer there. But that's not what we want. What set us apart from the rest of all the Chinatowns is precisely a continuous, historical, and yet evolving, changing, dynamic community. So, you know, I tell the politicians, if they want to listen, they have to understand this community. That's all. You can have both, actually, growth as well as preserving the historical significance of it. It's not very simple, but yet is doable. You have historical preservation district that, you know, I think the federal government has programs for urban centers in the United States, where if you designate historical landmark, not that you can't change some of the facade, what have you, the usage can still be changed. And they give you a special tax incentive. And you know who has been using those? They were all Republicans, big-time landlords that went into urban centers and rejuvenate the downtown areas or some historical areas and made it beautiful so people want to come as a tourist area. Our problem is that there was not enough leadership to go and have vision and don't mind taking that initiative up and educate the landlords and make them all want to do it, you know, and then and at the same time you can still keep your residents. We have done several projects, individual buildings, but that's about it. But not a wholesale, you know, the wholesale area has to be handled that way. In the meantime, the only way we could fight it so that the community doesn't disappear, because this community from a real estate viewpoint is under tremendous pressure from up the hill. You have all the fancy hotels and fancy condos pressing us from one side. On the other side, you have the financial district. Once Chinatown extended all the way to Sansom Street, and now we're down to Kearney. Block by block, building by building is gone. And so activists like ourselves, we do not have enough juice, or that we never have enough time. So the stopgap measure we have been using is lowering the height so that, we make it less desirable for somebody to come in and buy up a whole block, so that, it might involve 25 little stores. And we can't compete with the insurance company, with the banks, and what have you. That's reality. And so then we do those Band-Aid solution. So I heard that one of the banks was going to, 20 some odd years ago, bought out the lease option from Broadway all the way to Pacific. And you go count, and there are 26, 27 small family, stores involved. And they were going to build a banking tower there. And it's a horror. You do a whole city block. And so, went in and quickly downsized the area. But once was very expensive, for them to buy up the lease option for 200 feet height. But then 10 years ago, it looked like then, because of the costly real estate and how it went up, then even then they wanted to buy it. So we lowered it down to 80. But that is a temporary solution. And as I said, I'm not an expert in land use by any stretch of the imagination, and you really need a land use group to spend the manpower, the time, and study the whole of San Francisco, not just Chinatown, but how pockets or areas ought to be preserved and kept. People coming to San Francisco, they don't need to see high-risers. They come because of the historical perspective, the different culture, the quaintness of the different culture. You go to Mission Dolores, once upon a time, this belonged to Mexico, and you got your first mission there. And you look around in all the shops. Some of the Chinese have moved in there, the storefronts also, those are progress that you can't stop. Then you come to Chinatown. People don't come here and to buy t-shirt. So that's why it's important for people like us to help those remaining business that sell some art stuff, different items, and plead with them to change their storefront, to make it more attractive, handicraft, or ivory or carving. So make it different. I cringe every time some of our storefront, a new owner goes in and put a cheap awning out there and just put very cheap stuff to hook up or hang up the t-shirts. I bleed inside when I see that,